Hi, you're listening to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions. What that means is we get short stories, we select those short stories, and then we discuss them specifically about the ethics and the morality of the choices the characters and the situations put us in. Why did you do this? What makes you do this? What makes us good people? What's the nature of truth, goodness, all of that sort of stuff. And hopefully we're all better, smarter people for it and learn a little bit about why we think the way we think. So thank you for listening.
So I'm going to start. I'm like, where am I? Am I in the picture? Here I am. I'm going to start. You can't see me on camera, but I'm off camera, but I'm here. The point is we're starting season 5, and Jeremy and Sarah and Ashley and I have talked about how to improve the seasons. And one of the things that we had talked about was having 3 and 4 people is a lot, and it's tough to get everyone the chance to say everything they want. So we've decided for season 5, we're going to start rotating who does them. So I'm just popping in just to say hello, so there's some continuity. But this first one is Claim, and it's going to be done by Jeremy and Sarah. I'm going to go read my homework for the next story. I have to go do that. But I just wanted to say hello. They're going to do great. You're in great hands. And that's it. If you hear like a door slam, that's me going and leaving because I don't want to distract them. All right. Have fun, guys. Do like whatever people do.
Thanks, Colby.
Thank you. Hi, and welcome back to After Dinner Conversations. I am Jeremy.
And I am Sarah.
And this week we're doing the story Claim by Fiona Ennis. And so this is basically a story from the point of view of, what's this girl's name? Mara? No, she had a weird name.
Neve. Right.
And so she's apparently, goes to school and works at an insurance company. And while working at the insurance company, the local diocese calls and wants to take out an insurance policy, a liability policy against
accusations of child abuse.
Right, by priests. And she has an ethical issue with this. And
it should be, you should point, it's also, this story takes place in the 80s.
Right, 80s in Ireland.
This takes place in the past in Ireland, so it's kind of like a really specific timeline. So an insurance policy.
Right, and she takes issue, she takes the issue and her concerns to her boss, who threatens to fire her if she fails to write the policy. So, he says it's not their job to judge, it's just their job to insure. And then in a flashback, this shows why this point strikes so close to home with the narrator. As a young child, she was bullied on the school bus for being overweight. In an attempt to lose weight, she started getting off the bus early to walk the last 3 miles home. And then later, her bully accused the bus driver of touching her, this bully, when they were on the bus alone together. And she denied that she got off the bus and said nothing happened.
Right.
So I guess in result of this, she's coming full circle and not wanting to hide this anymore. And I didn't actually get that it was a flashback in the story. I thought these things were happening concurrently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was like, why is a schoolgirl working at an insurance company? So that was a little confusing. But anyways, so that's basically the synopsis. So it's an interesting story. I think that because it touches on a lot of different things, eating disorders and sexual abuse and bullying. And then this idea, the main question that this really asks is, are there some things that we shouldn't provide insurance for? Which I think is an interesting question.
And so I looked it up, and they actually do insure against these kinds of things, accusations of child abuse. Seems to be pretty common from what I read. Because when I read the story, I didn't think that was possible. So kind of disturbing.
Yeah.
But I guess in the same way it makes sense. Like as a teacher, we have liability insurance that protects us against accusations. But I was under the impression that just handles my defense if I were to be accused of child abuse. It doesn't pay the people who are accusing.
Well, I think it's whatever the cost is in that case, whatever the cost is to the district, that's what they're insuring against. And so that would be any legal fees or payouts because of any legal action. That's what your insurance policy is supposed to protect against. And I know there's similar controversy with like the police, where they're insured against wrongful death and things like that.
But similarly, I guess malpractice insurance
Right.
for doctors. So it's interesting that Neve's response, her immediate response to the request from the diocese was immediate disgust.
Right.
And disbelief. And she immediately wanted to go and report what the diocese had called and asked of her, and her boss said, "No, you may not do that." And there's a whole stack of CVs from girls just like you, and you don't stand a chance on the dole. So she writes the policy, but her initial response is disgust. And I think that the time period in the 80s is before the knowledge of this abuse within the Catholic Church was really widespread
Right.
or widely accepted as being true. So like when she's first talking to the lady from the diocese, she's kind of siding with her. Does that make sense? She's, these people are making all kinds of terrible accusations against the priests these days. And Neve says, "Oh, can you imagine, even after they've given up
Right.
their lives for the church?" And then this lady Margaret from the diocese kind of drops the bomb that it's...
Right. And this is what we want to insure against. And so it makes you, and I'm sure her immediate question is, well, if you want a policy against this, is it because you know something?
Right.
And you know these accusations will have weight.
Right.
So
So I think the flashback is important because she, as a child, didn't feel like she had a responsibility to tell.
Right.
She didn't want to stick up for her bully. I think there's a lot to unpack in that flashback.
Definitely.
It was a pretty crazy flashback. So as an adult, though, it seems like she fully feels the weight of her responsibility to tell.
Right. And that could just be a product of age and experience. But yeah, very interesting. I did think it was very interesting the number of different concepts this touches on, the eating disorders and how that affects her. And really the cause of those eating disorders really being that same bullying that was going on. Where the bullies on her bus or even her friends were telling her that she was overweight.
And her mother and her aunt.
Right.
Like, pretty much everybody seems
this
to
whole
be...
culture is really tied up in image identity.
Right, and they're talking about Tina Turner and... Oh, who was the other?
Right.
Taking out insurance policies on their legs.
Right.
So that... And then her boss making comments about, "Oh, isn't that... That's how she stays so nice and slender."
Right.
Yeah, it feels like that period of time was pretty intense with the body image and the very skinny, slender women being of heightened importance.
Yeah.
So that going along with sexual abuse, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I guess looking at the discussion questions, if you worked for an insurance company, looking at the insurance part of it, would you be willing to insure a diocese against sexual abuse allegations? And are there some things you shouldn't be able to buy insurance against? Which is, I mean, that's kind of the whole point of insurance is if things happen, we're covered. You're paying to have this financial coverage.
So...
Really, I'm sure if you get into like actuary tables and anything involving with insurance, there's a risk assessment. And so there's a cost associated with the risk of this particular type of coverage. And it's an interesting topic because I've read about police departments because as they start to lose court cases against any sort of wrongful death or abuse of inmates or any of those things, as the court turns against police departments and starts ruling against them, insurance coverage will go up.
Right.
Because they're going to start paying out more money to people. And so it's, even though we may not be able to make changes through the judiciary or through laws to make police departments behave, rising insurance costs will make police departments change their behavior.
That's interesting.
And so it's one of the other factors in all of really, and I would think this would happen with the church as well, not just because of public opinion, but because of rising insurance costs. It doesn't make sense anymore to allow this kind of behavior or to turn a blind eye to it.
Right, and cover it up.
Yeah.
Because in all likelihood, you're going to get completely massacred in court.
Right. So I guess in that sense, I think I don't know. And there might be, we would have to think, what's this slippery slope? What are these things that shouldn't be covered by insurance or you shouldn't allow insurance for?
Insurance is such a weird concept to begin with. I mean, I guess maybe the fact that she is in insurance and her eating disorder. So eating disorders tend to also revolve around control issues.
Right.
Being able to control the very few things that you can, how much you take in, or in her case, she purges. That is something that she has absolute control over, and it's telling that the 2 points that she's thinking of is with the first time she made herself throw up was after failing to stick up for her bully and back up her story that she was being abused by the bus driver. And then again, she had kind of gotten past her purging behavior. Now that she's written this policy for the diocese and isn't telling anybody about it, she's starting to purge again.
Right.
So those are situations that are beyond her control. It's not her fault that her bully, I think her name was Leanne, was abused by the bus driver. It's not her fault. But she's taking it on anyways as her fault because she failed to follow through. So she's re-experiencing that same trauma with this insurance policy. She's
and the guilt associated
being forced. And so insurance policies are supposed to protect you against things that are beyond your control. Right?
Yeah.
Like you can't cause a car accident and have your insurance cover it. You need to stay in, like...
Yes. And so, again, the idea that it's a liability policy against priests performing sexual abuse. So the policy isn't to cover the priest, it's to cover the diocese.
Right.
So it's their taking, because they know this is happening. And so...
Hi, this is Colby, and you are listening to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. But you already knew that, didn't you? If you'd like to support what we do at After Dinner Conversation, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/afterdinnerconversation. That's right, for as little as $5 a month, you can support thoughtful conversations like the one you're listening to. And as an ad incentive for being a Patreon supporter, you'll get early access to new short stories and ad-free podcasts, meaning you'll never have to listen to this blurb again. At higher levels of support, you'll be able to vote on which short stories become podcast discussions, and you'll even be able to submit questions for us to discuss during these podcasts. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being the kind of person that supports thoughtful discussion.
Performing sexual abuse. So the policy isn't to cover the priest, it's to cover the diocese.
Right.
So it's their taking, because they know this is happening. And so, yeah, it's an interesting, instead of
fixing the problem and taking out an insurance policy against it.
Right, because we know this is going to come up and cost the diocese money.
That seems like insurance fraud, though.
If you know this is happening?
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Like, doesn't it? Like, if you take out an insurance policy in your house and burn down your house, that's fraud.
Well, and that was the argument that the manager says. He's like, everybody takes a fire policy against a house. It doesn't mean all those houses are going to burn down.
Right, and that's how insurance companies are supposed to make money. So it's interesting that they would even decide to insure this. Like... Yeah, I guess maybe back then they really did not believe that this was happening, that it was just people making things up.
So it'd be interesting to know what's going on now in that sense. What is the church paying for these kinds of policies, if they can even get these kinds of policies? Like, will anybody cover a diocese for sexual abuse liability
Right.
at this point, and what does that cost?
Yeah, that seems like insurance fraud to me. Margaret from the diocese, they're coming for you.
So the narrator lied for the bus driver because she knew it would hurt the school bully. So given the various factors, how do you judge the narrator for her actions?
Well, for those particular actions, she's just a kid. She's
And
a
so
child. She's 12.
And she's just responding to to something that this is going to hurt that bully. So I'm absolutely not going to.
Do you think also her response is wrapped up in guilt for leaving the bus early and leaving the girl alone on the bus with the bus driver? Because she did get off the bus early to walk.
And knowing that the bus driver always asked this girl to move up front.
Right.
After she got off.
Right.
It could be, but it's not explicitly stated. But yeah, that could definitely be part of it.
So she
already feeling guilty, doesn't want to admit that she put this person
exactly
into harm's way.
Right.
Especially since she doesn't get off the bus the second day.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't get off early.
She stays on the bus. And she definitely feels, it says that she feels the guilt as she's watching how the bus driver looks at
the other girl. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't know, in the moment, I feel like I understand why she does that, because this girl is a bully towards her anyways. It's an easy way to hurt her by not backing her up. But I also then understand why she feels guilty about it. So it's an interesting point of view.
She has a lot of anger towards that girl.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hypocrisy that she sees in this bully, and she wants to point it out. And so when this girl comes forward with this accusation, I can imagine that Neve is like, you're not so special. Like,
right.
You're trash, just like me. And so her response to lie and to say, oh no, she's a liar. She says her mom is a model in Paris and she stuffs her bra with tissues. Why should we believe anything she says?
Yeah.
That must have been a very impulsive moment that was just fueled by a lot of
anger.
Of rage.
Yeah.
And yeah, she immediately regretted it. But she never went back and said anything. But how can you expect a child to be responsible like that?
Well, if you're not taught to be responsible like that already.
Not a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
No way. It would be interesting to know what happened to Neve after this, if she went and
did say anything.
And did say something later. Because she seems absolutely devastated by this turn of events. Like having to write this insurance policy. It seems to have really racked her.
Yeah, I do wonder where it goes after this. Because it
just kind of ends with her
being, okay, let's do this. I'll go ahead and send. I'm not going to say anything. We'll go ahead and ship it off. But it did seem like she had a lot of reservations.
She almost tells Maura, her coworker.
Yeah.
Knowing that Maura would
do something about
it. And then she stops.
Yeah.
So what do you think stops her from telling Maura?
I don't know. Is it the threat of being fired? Because, the boss implies that he would fire her for that. So what else could she have done? She could have told Moira more.
Because she almost pulls the policy out of the envelope and hands it to her, but then Maura says, I can stand up to him. And then she puts the policy back in the envelope and says, I know you will. Maybe she feels like she's protecting Maura as well.
Because she will also get fired.
Right.
By standing up to him.
Exactly. Oof.
Yeah.
These are two women in a really impossible situation.
They
seem to be really hyper aware of sexual harassment that's happening in this office as well.
Yes. So at this point, they can't do anything in the office. The only thing they could do is take it to the media. And you can't prove that I showed this to the media, but, maybe they found out some other way.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's the only thing I would think of is let somebody else know who can do something with the information.
Like Ireland in the 1980s. Ooh. And in this story, it's referenced that the divorce is not legal.
Right. That's
So
kind of what
this is a
starts
really
this off.
Deeply religious country.
And they
A
adjust.
deeply religious culture. And it almost, it would seem oppressively so.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's interesting. And I didn't know that divorce wasn't legal in Ireland until sometime in the 80s. Something to look into.
For sure.
I guess the next question on here, what are exactly her mental health issues? And what are the best steps for her to move forward to be a healthier person? I don't know if that's not really addressed in the story at all. It's a factor of who she is.
Yeah. Being raised by women who constantly tell you that you're fat and giving a 12-year-old weight loss advice is pretty intense.
Yeah.
And I'm really thankful that we don't live like that anymore. I can't imagine. Although I feel like I do know people
that
who
still
are kind
do
of
that.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That still call small children fat and make those judgments.
Right. And so you're feeding them too much.
Right. So, well, maybe we're not that far removed from it. I was about to congratulate our society on being more woke than this story, but maybe we're not. Maybe we have to give more thought to that.
I mean, not everybody is. But hopefully you would think that society is moving in that direction.
Right. Yeah. What was I thinking about? Her mental health issues, and from a young age being told that there's something inherently wrong with her. She has to fix this aspect of who she is in order to be accepted. And that seems to be, I feel like that's kind of recurring throughout the story is...
Right. I feel like this is something we've addressed in a lot of stories.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea that you're inherently wrong and you have to work to fix it.
Sure.
Instead of just being who you are.
Right.
And knowing which things need to be fixed, or, how do you make yourself a better person? And is something like an eating disorder making you not a good person or just a troubled person? I don't know.
Do you think that the story suggests that her eating disorder makes her a bad person?
No, I'm sorry. That's not what I'm saying.
That's okay. I'm here to help you finish your thoughts, Jeremy.
No, I just feel like we have talked about that before in other stories. Just what is it that makes us healthy people and what is it that makes us good people?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see health issues in this sense really contributing to that. So, kind of a weird segue.
Yeah, she's healthy in the sense that she appears slender and she works out every day. But it's to an extreme.
Right, and it's specifically because of body image, not because of a desire to be healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish the story had delved a little bit deeper into issues of it feels like there's something there between her eating disorder and the perfectionism there, and the Catholic Church and the need for the appearance of cleanliness.
Okay.
So she appears one way, but really this is what's going on. The church appears one way, but here's what's really happening.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. So, in some ways, she's a metaphor, or they're a metaphor for each other.
Maybe, yeah.
Or
I could definitely see that. I mean, I could dig that out of the story for sure.
Right.
I feel like the author probably knows a whole lot more about the church than we do. I think there's a lot in here that maybe kind of goes over our head because we are not Catholic.
Or
we did not
is
grow
just
up in the
assumed.
Catholic Church. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
We assume you know all of these things.
And with a name like Fiona Ennis, I can only imagine that she's probably Irish and has a much deeper knowledge of that that culture living in Ireland.
Yeah.
Probably knows a lot more than we do. So I wish I knew more. Had a more personal
connection to
connection
Irish
to
Catholic
this.
history.
Oh well, yeah. Like not being Irish Catholic, there's a lot that I probably don't understand here.
So the only other question on here is, are there any additional questions you would want to ask before issuing sexual assault insurance for the church?
Well, I think you would have to ask if the person who was taking the policy out knew if there was any assault happening at the time.
Right.
Because the insurance company would need to be covered.
In that case.
Like, we didn't know this was happening. They lied to us.
And this is then terms that we can deny it because...
Right. Insurance fraud.
Yeah.
Oof, I am really glad that I don't write insurance policies because that's just awful. I feel really bad for Neve in this whole story.
Yeah, well, and it makes me think of the movie Double Indemnity, where, it's all about an insurance investigator. And so I would assume that in any time somebody's filing a claim, the insurance company is looking at the claim to find evidence of fraud.
Right.
And one would think that when you issue it, again, they're taking certain steps to find out, that you don't already know this is going on, but I don't know. Again, not being part of the insurance industry. But again, I guess looking at that point, I don't think you should deny any kind of insurance, at least based on, the topics we've discussed. But, there's a cost associated with those, and that's defined by the insurance company based on the level of risk they're willing to assume.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think they're going to do their due diligence to begin with, and also check for fraud once a claim is filed.
Sure.
To whatever extent they're going to do that.
Any additional questions you would want to ask before issuance? That's a wild question there, Colby. Yeah. I feel like it's interesting because you and I tend to talk a lot about how we're not really qualified to answer these questions, but Colby and Ashley are always willing to dive right in. It's funny missing them on this one.
So is there anything else about this one that you want to cover? Anything else? I mean, we're about at that 30-minute mark.
Okay. No, I'm good.
So thank you for listening. Next week, Colby will be back. I think with you, Ashley? Or, sorry, you, Sarah.
Thanks. I know Ashley and I are both blonde and everything, but sheesh, Jeremy. I think it's Colby and I next together. Yeah.
Anyways, thank you for listening. This is After Dinner Conversations, and I'm sure Colby's going to come add some other stuff after we finish talking.
Thanks.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed listening to this, please like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. The vast majority of people haven't liked and subscribed, which means maybe it shows up in your algorithm, maybe it doesn't. So don't leave that to chance. Just go ahead and hit that button, and we'd sure appreciate that. And that way we can keep doing what we're doing, and you're not left to the whims of some algorithm. Thanks.